this one's called Explosion. So this one was collected in Norway, and this is actually a Nemorosa type rather than a Ranunculoides type. And I've got two forms to show you. I'm going to show you them next to each other. So again, got this rough bracteate, but this is Explosion. So we've got sort of a white petals with this explosion of rough green and stripes. And then equally to that, this is the same plant, which is much whiter and less roughage in the middle. But they were snapped off the same rhizomes. So there's quite a bit of variability, but again, Explosion is an absolute whopper of a plant. This plant, and I want to talk about this because this was a learning curve, and I may have talked about this before, and you will have grown this, Delphinium requienii.
Yeah.
And I tried sowing the seed at different times of the year, and these were autumn sown, pricked out into plugs, overwintered in plugs, and then I've potted them on into various sizes. This is a 9 centimetre, so it'll be for sale over the next couple of weeks, and then into litres. But last year, it was the first thing that Laura ever potted up, and we were in a real rush. And I gave her a tray. I said, "Pot these up," and she potted them, I don't know, a couple of inches too high, which was fine. But it was a big learning curve because I said, "We've not got time. We're just gonna have to leave them and see how they do." And we came out the next day, and it must be from where they're from. It was very windy, and they'd stiffened up overnight. And they'd got these, and this is the same. These were potted on. They've obviously got some physiological, something inbuilt in them that reacts to the wind, and they get these incredibly strong stems. And I've just found it amazing, and I've done it again this year. Obviously, it's a biennial, or I treat it as I almost treat it like a hardy annual.
Yeah.
Because it flowers first year, or these are going to be stronger plants grown sort of October sun. But it was absolutely amazing how overnight the wind had stiffened this, it reacted to the wind, it stiffened up. So I think anybody that lives in windy conditions or tough conditions, this is a great plant, and you get that lovely mauvey pink, mauvey purple flower that are much more delicate than a lot of the cultivated forms. But I just think it's a cracking plant, and it was one of the learning curves along the way. So that's why I brought that.
Well done, Laura. Go, Laura.
Well done, Laura. But there's always a learning curve. So I'm going to pick up this tray. I'm going to have to pick this up quickly and put it down because it's heavy. But I've planted up this. This is a little old steel trough, but it's got a wonderful little grass in it called Luzula pilosa, Igel. I'm going to pop it down and show you a small plant. And the reason I want to talk about it is because it's a fantastic grass for it's evergreen. So this is a smaller plant that's going to be for sale. Evergreen, so Igel means hedgehog in German. So it creates this wonderful tight little mound. It's a very, very attractive, tidy little Luzula. The flowers are actually very insignificant, but if you can just, those of you that are on the video again, last year's foliage takes on this sort of it gets a sort of a ready tinge, and then this year's foliage is very chartreuse green and pushes through it. And the plants in the ground, they get it's like a wonderful tight little dome that's about 20 centimetres across at full grown. But they're a great plant for a sort of a shady matrix. And I've got them in a little stock bed at the front with Primula, vulgaris sibthorpii, the little pink native Primula. And it just looks fabulous. And planting one of these every 40 to 50 centimetres with other things planted through them, it's just I'm convincing designers to use this. And things like Hakonechloa that get used en masse, and they're too big for a lot of spots. They get too big. This is a cracking grass for dry shade and damp shade.
I'd like to put that with.
Go on.
That little Australian Viola, hederacea.
Oh, that'd look great.
It'd be good, wouldn't it?
It would. It'd look great with some of them little violas, actually. Have you seen that little Molly Sanders as well? That little black flowered one. You're right. It'd look absolutely cracking with that.
Yeah.
And I think it's things like this. I'm really interested in good plants for small gardens. Yeah. And I suppose that's what Yorkgate's probably taught me is, most of the people that garden, they don't have massive gardens, or they've got little pockets, and even some of them little shady beds when you walk through some of the archways at yours, little tight little tidy plants like this, it's great. It's really easy to propagate. That was a pot. They were done in September, divided up. That's another thing on the nursery as well. So every single plant that we sell, you will get propagation instructions when you buy it. Which might sound like a terrible business model, but you know, it gives people faith in what you're doing, and they'll come back and buy something else.
Yeah.
Also, let's be honest, at least probably 50% of the people who buy plants, maybe not so much from a nursery like yours, but they're not necessarily going to do the propagation. They might want to know how, but they probably
Exactly.
rather just come and buy another plant. They want
Yeah.
the fix of buying something.
Absolutely, and that's part of the allure. So, in fact, it's the only grass I brought today because that's for later in the year. But we've got a big collection of Miscanthus, Humulinias, Calamagrostis, and then a few different Luzulas, but sort of grasses for every area, which I'm very, very interested in. Right, we're gonna go out the shade for a minute, and we're gonna come into the sun. And this is Euphorbia.
Yes.
And we're lucky that in the north we've got the National Collection of Euphorbia, and there's an amazing chap, real character called Don Whitton, and he's got the National Collection of Euphorbia on an allotment in Sheffield, and he's an oracle of Euphorbia, and I've got lots of different Euphorbias from him, and anything that needs ID, and he's great for that. He actually came to talk to the West Yorkshire Hardy Plant Society last week, and he came and had dinner with his wife before, and it was great. We had a great evening. But this is one that he recommended to me last year, and it's actually a rigida type. So Anemone rigida, which is, for those of you that don't grow rigida, it's like an upright version of myrsinites, and the flowers have actually gone over, but it's much more upright. But this one's called Euphorbia rigida Sardis. It's a wild collected form, and it's got these wonderful purple tips to the new growth. It's such an attractive form. I can't remember the name of that chap that collected it. Don did say it. And it's also got on the spent flowers, it's got this amazing spent bracts, this amazing flush. It's a really, really beautiful form. Obviously for full sun, free draining. And I'm really interested in these different rigida, myrsinites, epithymoides types.
Yeah, that is beautiful. You don't see that very often, though, do you? That is, as you might expect from you, Ben, a nice little treasure that doesn't turn up very often.
No, it is a treasure, and something like this, it can be done it comes true from seed to most parts, and you can thin out the seedlings that have not got this red flush. But again, that's one of the great things about meeting Don, was about when to propagate the euphorbia. So after they flowered, when this one obviously will be tip cuttings, but hopefully more from seed, so that you don't have to decimate the plant. But things like the epithymoides types and the, I don't know, crossorenzii, serraticarpa types, is after they flowered, they start to branch, they start to put little side shoots, and that's when is the time to take cuttings. So June, July. And again, interestingly, Don does them in a garage, no heat underneath, shady, puts them in a free draining mix, and we're all trying to be very clever with our propagation, and he straight into cells, back of his garage. So somebody that's really trialed and tested. So that's a cool one that
I remember seeing Euphorbia rigida very, very early. Lovely bright green, lime green bracts, looking absolutely fantastic. But it was underplanted by a crocus called Yalta. I don't know whether you know it. It's a mauve. It's a light mauve crocus, Yalta, I think. And the effect was absolutely stunning. I copied it.
Oh, well, I might copy it myself, actually. I might have a look at that. Yalta,
yeah.
Yalta. No, that's definitely one to go for. In fact, that's one thing at the front where we have put a few euphorbias out. There's no bulbs in there yet, so maybe I'll be planting some Yalta around the euphorbias.
I actually got really distracted.
That's a good idea.
I didn't quite see what the combination was, but there was a euphorbia alongside something really zingy and pink as I was driving, and then I remembered I was driving, and I actually did have to look at the road, so I didn't really get to properly see what it was, but I saw that this morning, and it was really lovely. completely unrelated, but just made me think of it in terms of like really punchy combos. Complete accident in my front garden at the moment. I've got that little Phlox, Fort Hill, I think it is, which is a really like sort of strong purpley pink, and it's next to Papaver rupifragum or fragum, however you say it. So like a ruffled orange poppy next to this like purpley pink. Oh, I'm absolutely loving it. I'm all over that combination. I wish I'd planned it, but it's fabulous. I just hope it keeps going for years.
That's the great thing, though, isn't it? Like you can recreate that now. You've stumbled across it.
Yeah.
You can make it happen.
And it works because the phlox is in a pot, I should say, because it's like a low growing phlox. So otherwise the poppies would be up here, but it's sort of spilling over a pot behind the poppies. So the poppies are right next to this like blanket of pink flower. It's just, oh, it makes me so happy.
New combination.
Yeah. I
That's
don't
what's
think
great,
everyone would
isn't it?
like it, but I like it. But then, I'm wearing this jumper, which is like all the colours known to man. So yeah, it works for me and it's in my garden. So that's
It's an
very good.
interesting point, that because Laura loves colour. She's mad on colour. We went to Jimmy's. Zingy. We've not actually been to Alan's in the summer. She's only seen Alan's in the winter, but Alan's garden is Laura's sort of garden. And the way that we're going to plant the nursery up, and we live on site, we live here together. I'm definitely getting more brash with the colours. I'm generally a bit more subtle with the colourings, but there's going to be loads of orange and bright colours, and we've got some. She loves dahlias, and she's come from a non-horticultural world with a more playful eye. And maybe I was getting a bit sniffy about some of my colour combinations. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it unfolds.
That's a very
the next couple
interesting
of
thing you
years.
just said, because Christopher Lloyd once said to me, or told me how lucky I was to have Graham to bounce ideas off. That was before the days of Fergus Garrett being head gardener at Great Dixter. And I think before his mother Daisy died, Christo used to sort of have that kind of bat and ball with her, and he didn't have anyone to have bat and ball with until Fergus came along. And now you've got it with Laura, and it is a very interesting thing to see how you can not change each other, but slightly merge and slightly influence each other, I think you could say.
Yeah, and sometimes too much knowledge, it can hinder.
It holds you back, yeah.
It holds you back. And I think that's one thing that we realise that not, and it's same with the propagation stuff, with trial and tribulations with things, is you can find out ways that things have not been done before. And it's the same with plant combinations, you can throw the rule book out. Obviously the rules are sometimes useful. But also the rule book can also be tossed out the window sometimes.
How many times you as a nurseryman and me as a gardener here, how many times have we broken off a piece of a plant, and rather than fuss about with it or anything, we just chuck the lower leaves off, stick it in the side of a pot where something else was growing, and then 4 or 5 weeks later you suddenly think, how the hell did that get there?
Absolutely, yeah.
And I always say to people, always remember that, sometimes people, they moan and groan a little bit when they receive things through mail order. And I think that's right, because mail order packing needs to be quite careful. But always remember that a plant wants to live. It doesn't want to die. So providing you fuss it up a little bit, you're almost bound to have success with it.
Jack Wallington, I don't know if it's because he came to horticulture a bit later than some other prominent gardeners. He always seems to be pushing boundaries, trying things, planting similar, alliums and seeing which one is best. And certainly the propagation, or with rules that have been handed down from garden to garden, he'll just completely discount them and try something out and see if it works for him.
Well, until I saw Jack Wallington's article, I think in Gardener's World magazine, I didn't realise you could eat cleavers.
Oh, really? Well, even that's new to me right now.
He says it tastes the tips of the shoots, if they're cooked or steamed or something, they taste like spinach. Might not be to everybody's taste.
Well, it's good to know. I won't get hungry because we've got plenty of it kicking about here.
Also, before we leave this idea of just trying things, my gate blew over and killed or knocked over a couple of plants. And one of them was that gorgeous Lunaria we've mentioned so many times on this podcast, Somerset Marble, which I love, like crazy splashed foliage. And I was so sad that it had just been beheaded. And so I just I had something propagating in a little tube of water, a little tiny milk bottle on the windowsill, and I popped it in there. And then it occurred to me, and obviously refreshing the water, it occurred to me weeks and weeks later, I was like, it's not died. And I couldn't really see any roots, but I thought, well, there's no point binning it. It's not, nothing's happened to it. It's still in there. And I think it's just forming the tiniest, almost imperceptible roots. It didn't strike me as something that would root in water, but I just sort of chucked it in there in case. And I think it is actually going to survive, amazingly.
That's amazing.
So hurrah, because it was, most of the ones that have survived in the garden, I really should rogue them out. They're not proper Somerset marble. So this was one of the only proper pink splashed leaves. So I think it's going to live.
Actually, Somerset Marble looks like a plant that's been irradiated, doesn't it?
Yeah, it definitely does. In fact, it's funny you say that because I'd never actually seen that until this morning. And in fact, rather embarrassingly, I was flying past Yorkgate and I was desperate for the loo. So I pulled in and there was only Tom there. He was a great friend of mine, Tom Nichols, the senior gardener. And he's got one Somerset Marble in the car park there. It was not necessarily to my taste, but I can appreciate one's love for it.
Yeah, I love it. Again, goes back to my jumper. I can see that not everyone would like it.
But you know what I love about it is I love it when I see visitors' reactions in the garden to it. I mean, it's Marmite. It's pure Marmite, you know?
Yeah. And that's the great thing about plants, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Talking plants. Right, I've got a few left. And the woodlandy plants. So I'm just going to get the mother plant, and then
Hey!
and then I've got a little tray of seedlings. So this is Senilsis aconitifolia, or the umbrella plant, and it is an absolute cracker. And I think, Alan, have you got one or two of these from seeing it?
Yeah, I have actually. I saw them at York Gate, and I didn't know that you'd planted them there, but I saw them at York Gate around about this time of the year, and they were just at the stage, and there was just these lovely little piles of umbrellas coming out of the soil with this wonderful foliage. I mean, aconitifolium, you can see that, can't you? It's
You
just
can.
like, it's like an aconite. It's a bit like Muxhood. That's what I'm trying to say.
Amazing sort of divided leaves.
Yeah. And they just had a presence about them. And I mean, you know what I mean when I say some plants talk to you. And this is one that spoke to me and probably to you when you first saw it, Ben, I suspect.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I just had to have it. Jack, very kindly gave me a Euphorbia with one seedling leaf of a Senilsis. Have I said it right?
I never know how to say it. I'll say Senilsis, but
yeah.
Well,
there's two of us. That's against the world. So I mean, and I took it home, and I mean, me being impatient, I got on the internet and I did manage to find myself 10 plants of it. So I was very pleased about that. And then we lost them. I don't know, somebody had moved a couple of trays. I had a couple of black trays of these plants, and somebody moved them somewhere safe. Could I find them? I searched high and I searched low. And you know what it's like when you lose something, you want it even more than you ever did because you can't find it, kind of thing. And it niggled and niggled, but I did find them, and I planted them in our sort of winter garden stroke woodland garden, and they are looking absolutely fabulous, and I'm thrilled to bits with it. There's a new plant for me. I loved it.
Oh, it's so good. And there's in fact, I was reading, so there's a wonderful plantsman up in this part of the world. In fact, he was talking at the Magic Plants alongside you last year, Peter Williams. And
Yeah.
Peter Williams is a great plantsman. He lives sort of east of York, member of the East Yorkshire Hardy Plant Society. And he's written a wonderful little article that was published HPS about Senilsis, and he sent me it last week. Because he's had incredible success growing them from seed. So then the plants that I got from Swine Meadow Farm Nursery were the ones that were planted at Yorkgate, and I collected seed off that. So this is not technically the mother plant. This is from the same seed-raised group of plants that I also got from Swine Meadow, that's doing very well. But I've had some success with the germination. And I wanted to show you because they're amazing little seedlings.
Hey, look.
They're like little waxy, they almost look like a little celandine coming up.
Yeah.
But they're these amazing waxy little seedlings with a red edge. And God, have I tried? I got loads of seed. When they flowered, they're like tiny shuttlecocks of the seeds. They've got sort of a tight point with like a little shuttlecock, so they're obviously wind dispersed. And I did autumn sowing anyway, the seeds rotted, and I had some more seed, last ditch attempt, and these were sown on the 23rd of March, 2024, so not very long ago. and they came up last week. And there's about 30 seedlings. So I will be keeping the seed, not overwintering them. And interestingly, reading Peter's article, he said, as far as he's concerned, they don't need any stratification or winter dormancy. You can sow them. So hopefully, in the next couple of years, I'll be selling this little bugger. And also planting it en masse all over my garden because I think it's a fantastic woodland plant.
I bet you were so excited when you saw that finally germinated, having had that failed attempt.
It was a great morning, actually. I went into the polytunnel. So we've got a cold polytunnel, and there were 3 things that germinated on over that previous night. One was Hakonechloa rubra, which is an absolute sod to grow full stop. It doesn't like to be divided. It very rarely seeds. Why it doesn't seed in the UK, I've got no idea, because it seeds freely in New Zealand, where it's from. But I've got seedlings of that. And then also a wonderful plant that, again, Tom at Yorkgate introduced me to, Datisca cannabina.
I'm just going to ask you about that.
Datisca cannabina, whopping great arching stems that grow through the year. And it's not germinated. Anyway, the seedlings are tiny, and it's come up like cress. There's thousands of the little buggers. So all in the same morning, Senilsis, Aconitifolia, Hakonechloa rubra, Datisca cannabina. So I was over the moon that morning.
Yeah,
and they're the wins. They are the big wins in the wet weather.
Some kind of massive tongue twister.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's mentioned them three plants in the same sentence.
Gordis, you might remember that Datisca growing in the wall garden at Holcombe Hall. It's in the corners, that massive great perennial with these great weeping seed heads when we were there. Do you remember?
Yeah. Now you mention it, I do. Yes.
Yeah, fabulous statement plant.
I think I've seen pictures of Hauser and Worth. Really sort of attractive photos back towards the studio or whatever, the gallery. And there's these wonderful big arching, huge. They go 9 foot in a year. Big arching stems that have got these big sort of long racemes on them, like I suppose like a cannabis or a nettle or something like that.
Never seen one.
Really? No, me neither. I don't know why I know whether so we've got moving on swiftly. We've got a couple of things. 2 woodland plants left. This one is just people sing about Paris polyphylla and incompleta complexa, but this is Paris quadriphylla, our native woodland plant. And I've got an amazing friend called Janet Lord, who introduced me to Hakonechloa, hence it being one of my favourite plants. But she also has been very successful growing all sorts of wonderful, unusual things. And she gave me a pot of Paris quadrifolia that had been in a terracotta pot for years. And it's just kept spiraling around this pot. And it was in a plastic terracotta type pot. And this pot, I divided it 2 years ago. And I split it into, there must be 100 pots of 9 centimetres, and there's another 90 pots of 1 litres, and they all came out of this one pot.
Oh my God.
But interestingly, there are, in a similar thing when you're dividing the anemones, they can sit, if you snap off the buds, the sort of the terminal buds where the leaf and the flowers come from, they can stay dormant for a year.
Yeah.
So I grew all these Paris, and they didn't come up. There was 1 or 2 came up, and I thought, oh, bloody hell, I killed it. And maybe this is why you can't get it for sale, because I tipped out, I was going to tip them all, throw them all away, and I tipped out the pot, and they were there. And all the shoots, they had roots on, and all these rhizomes or stolons were under the surface waiting to come up. So I've left them, and this year they've all come up, and there's a pot full. Everyone's a pot full. And this is one of the stock plants that I kept that I sort of put in the nursery. And so those of you that don't know, I've got these amazing, unusual. I don't even know how to describe the flower.
That's a fantastic woodland plant.
Fantastic. I first saw it on a woodland walk in Essex when I was at Audley End as a trainee. I went on a wildflower walk, and they had this in a woodland near Saffron Walden. And it's in little pockets of woodland all over the country. But yeah, I've got pots and pots of it now, and hopefully I'll be. I'm gonna restrict myself to selling maybe 30 or 40 a year, and get it into everybody's garden, because you very rarely see it.
Yeah. Well
I love
done.
that like little chocolate button right at the center of the bracty flowery thing. I mean, I'm obviously terrible on my actual proper terminology, but it's
Yeah.
very, very charming, very
They're as,
beautiful.
they're as close as we get to a trillium, I think, in this country. Native.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the one. And then I've got one last plant. Interestingly, from another chap that spoke at the Magical Plants conference last year in West Yorkshire was, this is a wonderful epimedium by the wonderful Julian Sutton. This is Winter's Tale. And it's Flavum cross pineatum, I think. And it's got this gorgeous flushed red new foliage and these very upright, attractive yellow flowers. Is it Winter's End or Winter's Tale? I think there's one of each. It's Winter's End. That's got an AGM. And Julian on Desirable Plants, wonderful, amazing speaker that just comes to life when he starts talking about plants. One of my absolute favourite people to go and see talk.
He came to talk when I was talking, didn't he?
Did.
You know, he's expressed himself with his hands were going and he was enthusiastic. And you couldn't help but sort of think, my God, this man is amazing.
He is. He's an incredible plantsman, and he's got a big knowledge on South African plants as well. And he's played around with hybridizing gladiola, some of the species ones. But he's bred a lot of wonderful. He loves epimediums and woodland plants, but he really does. He comes to life when he's on stage.
Yeah.
And I've seen him talk a couple of times and thoroughly enjoyed it. And anyway, this is one of his introductions a number of years ago. So yeah, and a big inspiration in terms of speaking and the plant world. And that brings me to my last plant. That is my last plant. I hope I've not brought
Well,
too
you
many.
saved a good one for last. I can never get enough of epimediums. I think every single epimedium I see, I FLOMO over. I just think they're such beautiful plants and they're often such good doers as well. I've neglected mine terribly and they're all fine. You know, they're all doing well, regardless of the last year of like not gardening at all. FLOMO, by the way, if you've never caught one of these podcasts before, is that fear of missing out you get about a flower or a plant. And you'll be very well acquainted with it right now because you'll probably want everything that Ben's talked about. I mean, I'd love to know how many of these plants the average gardener actually grows because I feel like you have just shown us so many things that you just don't, you don't hear about, we haven't mentioned before, or I haven't seen growing in the garden for a long time. It's wonderful. My FLOMO is a plant I think you've shared in the past, a Baptisia called dark chocolate. I've only got boring, bog standard Baptisia australis. And I remember FLOMOing over Baptisia australis, years and years and years ago when I first saw it. And I'm so pleased to have it. But this Baptisia dark chocolate has like charcoaly purple flowers with that bit of yellow on them. And it seems from looking up about it online to have a really lovely habit, be really bushy, lovely leaves, and of course great seed pods as well. So a lot to love. And Baptisia seem to be on the whole really good doers.
They do. It's interesting, Baptisia. I know Steve Edney's been trying a lot, hasn't he?
Yeah.
From my short experience with Baptisia the last couple of years, this wet winter, dry summer, they're pretty good. I've got a plot in the. In fact, one thing I didn't mention is I've got a lot of horsetail on the site. So the stock beds are not on site; they're in the village. And I grow on a wonderful plot, that was run by a wonderful flower grower. And I've put some Baptisia dark chocolate in the ground. And I was down there and it's heavy clay and it has been so wet. I mean, it's still sat wet now. And I went down there the other day to do a bit of weeding. And this dark chocolate's pushing up these wonderful dark shoots. And it's got through this really wet, horrible winter. Very compact at the base, wonderful flower. But again, Dutch chocolate was the first sort of reincarnation with them chocolatey flowers, and then it's even darker than that. It's a bugger to propagate. I mean, on the continent, it's micropropped, which is something that I'm not interested in. I'm interested in doing it. Well, you can do it again, a bit like the old euphorbias when they start to produce the little side shoots. That's when to take the cuttings of the Baptisia after they've flowered. Easy to take, not easy to overwinter. We've only got a handful, and maybe we'll get better at doing that. But it's a plant that doesn't like being transplanted. They don't like being split. So they really need to be grown from cuttings. They need to be potted on, and they need to be planted relatively small and to be patient with. But dark chocolate is a cracking plant. So I've only got, I think there's 3 left in pots on the nursery, and I probably won't have it for sale for 3 years.
Oh,
Yeah.
so I'm
So
going to really give people FLOMO because they're going to have to sit tight and hold on if they want to get it from, a proper nursery.
yeah,
Typical, I would pick something that's difficult, though at least,
there's a couple left. We'll see what we can do.
it's all right. It'll give him time to grow up a little, and then I'll be a little, and I'll have more time to look after this plant. It doesn't necessarily sound like it would love my soil. Where are you at with your FLOMO, Ben?
Oh God, where do I start? Do you know what? I know exactly where I'm going to start. There's some amazing Miscanthus coming out of Eastern Europe, especially Poland. And I don't know if you've seen it. There's a Miscanthus called Lady in Red. There's very little information about it online. I saw it on Instagram. And there's these panoramas of these stock beds of Miscanthus, and there's some great ones. There's a guy called Arthur Madge, that bred a wonderful new one called Silver Charm. And if you come across Dreadlocks, he bred that. I don't know if it's the same chap. I think it's somebody else in a similar part of the world, but it is incredible. It goes this beautiful red streaked. It changes from September, and the later it gets, I mean, Alan, you'll want to buy everyone on the planet if you see the thing. It is the most incredible plant. And I showed Henrietta, our propagator. We sort of go mad about plants every day. And we were just like, whoa, we've got to get it. Anyway, it's PBR already. From what I gather, you cannot get it in the UK. But God, it looks amazing. So yeah, that's
We'll
my
get it here, Ben. Somebody will get it here.
big Flomo, big Flomo.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Oh,
that's my Flomo.
that's a great one to bring to the party. Particularly very brave of you to tell Alan, because as soon as it does land on our shores, obviously he will buy all of them. So you'll never ever see one unless you go to East Ruston. Alan, what in particular are you FLOMOing after?
Well, I'm not mowing after things that are really almost technically unavailable at the moment. But I mean, I take, my inspiration from Ben, because I mean, he's just such a knowledgeable fella, and he fills me with love for plants that I didn't know before, as you've done with your anemones. You reignited my love of Delphinium requienii. I love that little Luzula. And I just cleared an area of garden, which is it's a lot, sort of oak woodland, I suppose you'd say. It gets morning sun for a very short time, and then these huge branches are from the oak. So it does all it's growing now. So I want all of these anemones to be underneath these oak trees with a collection of arums that I've been acquiring for leaf color and leaf shape and everything else. And epimediums. But the trouble is with epimediums and me is I don't know where to start, and I need some guidance, really. I need to do a bit of research, I suppose. Get off your backside and do some research, man, for God's sake. Because from what we just heard from Ben today, I mean, even down to the basic Paris quadrophila native to this country, why don't we see that more? And why am I not planting it? It's ridiculous, isn't it? Until you actually sit and have these wonderful conversations and you have bat and ball between the three of us, you suddenly think, well, wow, that and that. And I didn't know that Synelsis had been at York Gate, where I saw it and fell in love with it. I didn't know that it had been planted by Bren, or that he got it originally from Swine's Meadow Farm. I didn't know all that, but I do now. And it rather reinforces my love for that actual plant, because, it's got connections for me now. And so my FLOMO is going to be anything from the list that we've heard of today to put into my newly little bit of woodland garden. And it's not that little, actually, because I have got 32 acres.
So it's about the most Alan thing ever. My FLOMO is basically everything, and I'm going to plant it all.
I've forgotten, and I can't believe I've forgotten this. I've forgotten to show you my favourite plant that's behind me.
Oh, come on, you must.
And this is this. So I'm going to tell you the story first. So I bought this plant originally as a cut-in from a Kent Alpine Garden Society show 7 years ago for £1 off a chap, and I asked him if one of the parents was Hebe Hulkiana, and he said no. But obviously he didn't know the parentage. But it was a little stall as you went through Sutton Valence Alpine Garden Show, and I bought this little pot. And the original plant that I bought is on the front corner of the rockery at Yorkgate, and it is the most wonderful plant. And this is a cutting from the parent I've been growing for 2 years. And this is
Whoa.
Hebe cross Fairfieldii. And any of you that are listening on the podcast and are thinking, oh, a Hebe, this is a Hebe like no other. This is Hebe. It's cross with Hulkiana and Labordiana. And as far as I'm aware, nobody grows Labordiana in the UK. Hulkiana has a tendency to, the leaves go slightly black if you get a bit of cold weather. And this hybrid has got this red sort of serrated margin to the leaf, never shows a touch of any damage in any sort of weather. It's got that hybrid vigor, and it is covered in these wonderful pinky white lilac flowers at this time of year. And it is absolutely, I mean, New Zealand, a lot of my favorite plants from New Zealand, but this is just an absolutely standout plant. And this is 2 years old, this cutting. And it's in a, I don't know, it's probably in fact, in even better, it's in a Sankey's of Bulwell terracotta.
Hey, lovely.
And this pot, so those of you that know Sankey's of Bulwell, was an amazing, pot maker from from Bulwell in Nottinghamshire, that closed down the collector's pots. And I found this pot in the woodland at the nursery, up in the woods, by the stream, under a load of leaf mould, and it's got my favourite plant in it. So this is my star plant for the day, and it is just compact. This is about 40 centimetres high by wide, and then the best thing is that you're going to have to wait, because I didn't take any cuttings of it last year, so it ain't going to be for sale for 2 years. So I do know that Morton Nursery, wonderful shrub nursery that's run by Jill McMaster and Gail. They sell it. Slightly different form to this one, but I'll be taking, again, it's another plant that I take cuttings. They'll be semi-ripe after it flowers, when it starts to branch. And actually, I made a bit of a naughty trade with Jack the other day at Yorkgate, because he loves Prince Eugen, one of the anemones, and I said to him, you can have one only under one circumstances, that you give me the complete caveat to propagate from the Hebe at Yorkgate, and you're not allowed to sell it in the nursery. and he agreed. So anybody listening that's from Yorkgate, you're not allowed to propagate it. Only I'm allowed to propagate it. But anyway, the jokes aside, yeah, this is one of my absolute favourite plants, and I think it should be planted, and it be in cultivation everywhere. So yeah.
You know, Benny, just reminded me of something. There's a couple that come to the garden. They're season ticket holders, and they come from Nottingham, and they come about 5 or 6 times a year. And I was talking to, we just opened beginning of March, right? Not much around at that time. And I was talking to the lady, and I said, you know, what do you find fascinating in the garden? She said, oh, I love all your Sankey pots.
And they're great, aren't they?
Yeah.
And it must be said, that plant, if you're listening to the audio version, do go and see if you can clap eyes on an image of it, because it's dreamy. It's got that kind of, I don't know, fantastical fairy-like property. It's so airy, and there's lovely little pale pink flowers sort of shaking about in your hand as you talked. Really, really charming.
The best thing is this podcast that we all do, we're all hoping to inspire people, and nobody's inspired me more in the past goodness how long than this man, Ben Preston. And this last plant I've just seen, I'm immediately thinking to myself, spring containers.
Oh,
I mean, you need more than one. Well, I would, because my containers are big, but how unusual is that? Get 10 of those, make 2 containers up, 5 in each with spring bulbs and goodness knows what else you got. Well, people are going to be dreaming.
Cracking plant. It's got good foliage. When I flew into Yorkgate on the flying visit, I ran round to the rockery and took a picture of it, and then ran out, because I love it that much. And it is lovely. It's perfect on the corner of a baking hot sunny border. It's right on the corner. Perfect little full stop. But yeah, and just one other thing, and I keep going. Another Flomo, and you pricked my ears up when you mentioned Arum. And Jack at Yorkgate is Arum mad.
Yeah.
And when I was over in Ireland, I went to do a couple of talks in Ireland in February. And I went to Jimmy Blake's garden, and I also went to Hester Ford's garden, and they both had a new Arum called Chewy.
Chewbacca.
Well, it must be, but yeah, I can't remember for the life of me. Hester did send me the the species name, which she may comment on the video hopefully and say, or I will find out. But yeah, it's got this amazing mottling, and like they do with the dark spots and the green and the greys. They both had this plant that they'd obviously acquired from the same person, and it is incredible. I'm sure it's on the Cotswold Garden Flowers Encyclopedia thing with all the plants on it. It's on there, so you can see a picture of it. But it is a beautiful, beautiful plant. So you definitely
Another one for the wish list, Ben.
one for the wish list. So Jimmy had a big clump of it, and so did Hester.
Yeah.
Just to make you really jealous.
Just so you add another one to the list. But that's on my Floma list as well, so I'll have to try and beat you to it.
Yeah, good luck with Alan. Ben, I think Alan was absolutely spot on. This has been astonishingly inspiring. So thank you very much for gathering up all of these gorgeous, gorgeous plants. This podcast, I mean, we've been meaning to organise this for a long time, various, busynesses going on, but it was the Anemones that did it. I just WhatsApped you and said, oh, the Anemones. So I'm delighted that we've managed to convene at an Anemone time. It's been an absolute joy. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
And great success to you and Laura with Cliff Bank.
Yeah.
If it stops raining, we might get somewhere.
I can't wait to come and have another look now that it's all up and running, and there are so many wonderful plants to come and buy. Everyone, go to Cliff Bank. It's right near all these wonderful gardens. What more excuse do you need?
Thanks for a little shot of adrenaline in the arm before we open. That'll get me through. I've actually got to go and fill the nursery with plants now. It's still empty. We open tomorrow morning, so it's going to be a long evening.
Oh, good luck with you, Ben.
Oh, well, good luck with that. Until next time, happy gardening, everybody.
Happy gardening. Yay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
My goodness me, is it real?
Lady in red is making head turns wherever she's seen.
There you go.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's like a bonfire.
It's
Yeah.
amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Don't
And
you-
we've got,
You keep
We've
your hands
got
off.
the
You keep your hands
campus
off it.
Can you hold fire for a second? I think my mother is outside with the baby. Well,
Absolutely.
small child. And I feel like she might think she's trapped in the garden, as in she doesn't think she can come in.
Got 3 that the labels have washed off, and they're all new ones that are unnamed, and I don't know what they are.
oh no.
They'll go in big pots and they'll be all right.
But it's good to know that doesn't just happen to people like me. It happens to people like you as well.
Oh yeah, I kill loads of plants and lose loads of labels. It's a bugger.